HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
Today's program was brought to you by Roth Cheese, a pioneer in the U.S. specialty cheese movement. For more information, visit rothcheese.com. This week on Meat and Three, we're exploring the intersection between food, agriculture, and competition. Learn how a chicken raising contest in the 1940s led to the poultry industry we have today.
And they were going to run a contest and try and develop what they would call the chicken of tomorrow.
We'll also venture into the world of agricultural video games, where a new set of tractors is making a lot of fans happy.
The biggest addition to 19 was the John Deeres. That's what everyone was hyped for.
And we pay a visit to a group of Indian restaurants that aren't on the friendliest of terms.
Usually they wait for my restaurant, but after a long wait, they go to next door or downstairs. But this is how they do business. They completely copy whatever we do.
Embrace your competitive spirit and be the first to listen to new Meat and Three episodes by subscribing now. That's Meat +THREE, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, hello. This is Lisa Held coming to you live from Roberta's in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and you're listening to The Farm Report, a Heritage Radio Network show about the people, processes, and policies that shape how food is produced today. Today, I'm here with 2 members of the team from Dig In, a fast casual restaurant group based in New York. Taylor Lanzett, the Director of Supply and Sustainability, and Larry C., the Farm Manager. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And right before the show, I learned something that I didn't know, which is really fun, which is that, Taylor, you actually used to host a show on HRN.
Yeah, Eating Matters, all about food policy and how it impacts your everyday life.
So that's really cool. You're like part of the Heritage Radio family.
100%.
And that show is still on, hosted by Jenna Liu.
Yeah.
So if you've never listened, definitely check that out. So happy to have you back. So I think that where we should start is just in case people don't know what Dig In is. If they're not in New York, they've never gotten to go in and eat. Can you give us a little background on when it started, the kind of food you serve, how many locations there are, sort of like the big picture? What is Dig In?
Dig In started in 2011 and combined fine and the best parts of fine dining with fast casual. And so we created our new category called Fine Fast. And our focus is on seasonal American food. So we work directly with producers locally and build menus that support seasonal and regional farms.
And how many locations are you at right now?
We have 26 locations, 3 in Boston, and the rest are in New York City.
Wow. And the Boston locations came fairly recently, yeah?
Yeah, I think about 2 years ago.
Okay. So that was like probably a big deal, branching outside of...
Second market, and we'll be opening up our third market very soon.
Oh, can you tell us where, or is it top secret?
Can't tell you yet.
Got it. So, you mentioned in that description that you source from local farms. So that's kind of one of your differentiators in this realm, right?
Yeah, we are really focused on working with producers directly, and that manifests in a myriad of ways. We plan at the beginning of the season. So this past month and from February and March, we planned over 3.5 million pounds of food with farmers who are crop planning for us, building their farm plans around products that we're looking to source from them. We also intentionally work with farmers who are working on transitioning to organic or small scale or looking to scale their business. And alongside of our own farm, Larry helps us find new farm partners and really legitimize the work that we're doing in the space.
Right. And with 3.5 million pounds, how does that, what percentage of the food that you're serving is that? Like, how does that number compare to the pounds of food that you're using?
So last year, over half of the pounds of vegetables that we served were sourced locally, and over 3/4 were sourced direct from partners that could call me up during this podcast and just want to chat and catch up.
Right. That happens a lot. You're on the phone with
all
farmers
the time.
a lot, I'm sure. Not just Larry, right?
Larry takes up the most time, but
Well, so, and I want to get into that. I want to really talk about your day to day and how you work with farmers. But Larry, why don't you give us some context on what the farm itself looks like?
So we started Diggin' Farm 2 years ago. We're moving into our third season now.
Okay.
We grow about 12 to 14, really depends on, how you count it, 12 to 14 acres of mixed vegetables in Chester, New York, which is in southern Orange County, about hour 15 north of the city from Midtown.
It's also, fun fact, where I grew up.
In Chester? Really?
fun
Well,
fact.
so I grew up in Warwick, which is right next to Chester.
Right next door. Amazing.
And so I spent, my entire childhood there. Chester was, I was in Chester a lot. My high school best friend's boyfriend worked at the pizzeria there. So,
No way. What, the one in the village?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a cute little town. Oh, we love going to that pizza place. Yeah.
What about Alan's Falafel?
And then Alan's Falafel.
That did not exist.
Oh.
I've heard that it's really good. Now when I go visit
Excellent.
my family, everyone talks about it.
We eat a lot of Alans on the farm.
But yeah, it's such a cool agricultural region. Because of the black dirt.
Yeah, the black dirt. So we grow in the black dirt, which for our listeners who don't know what we mean by the black dirt, it is muck soil. So what it is essentially about 3,000 acres of wetland that was drained out in the early 20th century. And so if you kind of think about that, the concept of draining 3,000 acres of wetland today is unfathomable.
Yeah.
And so this region is really unique because it's super fertile soil. The soil is jet black. I remember when Taylor and I first visited the site that we're on, I didn't want to walk into it because when you're on a farm, normally you see anything that dark, it's usually cow poop. And so all of the alarms were going off in my head. It was like, don't touch this. And eventually it was like, oh no, this is just
That's
soil.
just the dirt, yeah.
And so we're really lucky to be there. I think it's it's the largest stretch of black dirt, of muck soil in the country outside the Everglades, and it'll always be that way again because a project of this scale would never ever happen again. And we're really lucky to be there. It's super fertile. We never actually have to or push any compost onto the ground. It has all the fertility that we need just to begin with at a baseline. On a normal organic farm, the organic matter, which is the measure of carbon and general soil health, is usually around 3 to 5% in a standard farm. On a really high performing farm, you're looking at 10 to 15%. Here, our baseline is somewhere between 30 to 50%.
Oh my gosh.
So it's essentially like growing in compost
Yeah.
itself, and our plants grow really fast, they grow really well. But on the flip side, right, if our plants grow well, the weeds
Right.
grow even faster. So in organic production, the main challenge has always been weeds, and we have more than enough at our farm to serve the region. But in any case, yeah. So we do 12 to 14 there. The primary focus of our farm is education. It's
Okay.
education for our chefs who come visit every other week during the summer. They come, they learn about farming, they learn about the work that it takes to grow food, and learn some of the science behind it. And we make it fun, and they help us out on the farm a little bit. And this way, our intention is that when our chefs come out and they participate in the harvest and they do work on the farm, when they see those vegetables again in the restaurant, they're going to cook it with more soul. They're not going to waste the food. They're going to understand where it's coming from and, the amount of labor and passion that was put into it at its start. And they should be expected to put that same amount of labor and passion in it when they're cooking it.
Right.
And, we think it's a really powerful thing. Everyone, all of our chefs, they want to come out to the farm. Whenever I go into any of our dig-ins, they're like, Larry, when are we going to the farm? When are we going to the farm?
There's a really amazing emotional connection, right? When any chef or someone who works in food walks onto a farm, and it's the moment when you harvest a cherry tomato and it bursts in your mouth and the sun's shining on you and you're sinking in the black dirt. And so for a lot of our team members who are chefs in training or learning what that culinary experience could look like, sometimes it's their first experience on a farm, and the amount of information that they're taking in plus the emotional connection is just really rewarding.
And I think it's important too to recognize that when we say chefs, we talk about every team member in our restaurants, right? We consider every person who works at Dig In a chef or a chef in training. That's where we eventually want them to become. So when we say chefs, we mean everybody at our restaurants, and they all come out. Yeah, they have a grand old time there. They get some Allens, do some field work. And then, we also, on the other side of that too, is, we run a farmer training program as well. And so every year we bring on a new crew. The people that we hire people with very little experience in the field, right? 1 year at the most, maybe 2 years.
Right.
And so, we pay above the industry average. We pay overtime on our farm, which is, and I'm not sure if your listeners know this, but is not required for farms to pay overtime. So it's a pretty good deal, for our crew. And, we want them to, we want to bring a new crew in every year because we want this to be a training place where young people come in and they get the skills that they need to move on to any other farm and become a manager there or to start their own farm. I call this like kind of a crash course in agriculture because, we just had our crew start on Monday. And on Tuesday, they're already on a tractor tilling a field.
Wow.
We really want them to have the tools and the confidence to work, or not just to work, but to run their own operations soon after they leave our farm. And so they take part of, every single part of our farm, from greenhouse management, tractor operation, post-harvest, delivery, everything. Everything that I do, they do as well. And we're an open book. They see, all of our budgets, they see all of our equipment purchases, so that they have an actual well-rounded view of what it takes to run a farm.
Right.
And not just that, but we're linking the Dig In restaurant group and the supply team to them as well. So if they have questions about what it looks like to supply for a restaurant of our size, how to work with buyers, the differences between wholesale and retail, the experience is really well-rounded.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so then what about the food that you're growing? So the produce, does it end up on plates at Dig in bowls? I think you mostly have.
Yeah, our farm, we grow, it's a standard, not standard, but it's a mixed vegetable farm, and we grow all the vegetables that you might see on any other farm, right? I like to call it a hybrid CSA wholesale model where we grow a little bit of everything and a lot of a few things. We grow a lot of cucumbers, we grow a lot of tomatoes, we grew a lot of eggplant last year. Not going to grow quite as much this year, and we grow a lot of chili peppers. And so we kind of think of those as cornerstones of our operation, which is where our budget is built.
Okay.
And everything else is mostly for our crew to understand, like, how do you grow these things, right?
Okay.
Dig In buys in so much broccoli from our partner farms in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. That doesn't necessarily make sense for me to grow any broccoli at all. But,
Got it.
It would, we'd be a poor training operation if our farmers didn't know how to grow broccoli, right? So we grow, we want our team to experience every single vegetable that they might see on any other farm.
Right.
And so, sorry. And yes, everything that we grow does go to our restaurants.
Yeah.
We understand that this is a fairly unique position that our farm is in that it is, funded by Dig In, and that, we have certain advantages in the industry, and we want to be a good neighbor, and we want to be a good force in agriculture. So we don't want to go to a farmer's market and compete with other, young farmers or other family farmers. We don't want to run a CSA because there are already so many CSAs in our area.
Right.
So our intention is that we try to grow things that will take Dig In's reliance on supply outside of our region and focus it into New York again.
Got it. Yeah, and I mean, it's like how much do you think is actually going from the farm to dig in? Like, do you have any idea of like how many pounds of produce you're producing there?
Yeah. So last year, probably close to 80,000 pounds went to dig in, and this year we're hoping for over 100,000.
Yeah, I think 150.
150.
You know, we like to challenge ourselves here.
Yeah.
But on a sort of for context, last year in total, Dig In bought 6 million pounds of vegetables. So
Right.
there's
It's a small proportion.
It's a small
but,
portion,
yeah.
but what really sticks is that for so many, there's such variety in it, and a lot of the produce that's not core to our menu will be the inspiration for our specials program.
Got it.
So you could walk into a dig and sort of have a surprise and delight experience where Larry was growing a small amount of shiso, and it ends up at your dig in.
Yeah, so a lot of the specials that you'll see at our restaurants will come from the farm. And then there are certain items, too, that come directly from our supply. So, for example, last year, we grew all the basil for our pesto throughout the summer. So all the pesto in our restaurants were from our farm. So we'll kind of pick and choose certain items that we say that this is reasonable for a farm of our size to grow, right? Like, we could never supply, all the kale or all the broccoli that Dig In produces. But there are certain
I'm
items
glad
that we
everyone's
can.
eating so much broccoli. That's
Everyone's
great
eating
news
a lot
for
of
the health
broccoli these
of
days.
New Yorkers.
Broccoli and sweet potatoes.
I mean, that's great.
I think what's really cool is that, since we started this farm, we have our own, I always like to say that, we farm in the way of our mentors, and we kind of add on, and we grow a little bit, but it's always, we all have certain styles, right? And as Taylor knows, I have a certain style of farming, and I have a certain style of pack out, and I have a certain, selection of varieties that I really like. And so, the tomatoes that we get in normally through our suppliers are a certain set. We have a contract out, and they deliver the same thing every week.
Right.
For us, we grow a whole different, way different, like a larger variety and all these weird different shapes, and then we send those to our restaurants too, right? And so this forces our chefs to be more agile, right? To adapt to normally, before we had this farm, right, it would just be the same tomatoes every week, and it's the same thing. But now, all of a sudden, boom, here's a case of tomatoes where you've never seen it before, and what are you going to do with it? And you're not going to be able to cut these the same way that you normally cut them, right? So it makes our chefs think a little bit more and think outside the box that that they've always been trained in here at Dig In to expect new vegetables, to expect new ways of cooking, and to learn and to grow.
Right.
I think that's a really powerful and important thing.
Yeah, and kind of unexpected at a restaurant like Dig In, like where you're going for lunch, or you might not expect to have this really interesting special on the menu at a similar another restaurant of that kind. Okay, so we've got Larry is growing these amazing vegetables in Orange County, and then Taylor, you're working with all these other farmers all over the region. This inevitably involves a lot of logistics.
Love logistics.
So, I mean, me too, which is why I'm asking you about this. But, I think most, especially places in the fast casual space, when you have a lot of locations of a restaurant, it's easier to buy from Sysco or Baldor because you can place an order and they show up with everything and you don't have to deal with that, right? So what are some of the challenges that you face in terms of making this work?
Yeah. So we have a central distribution center in the Bronx that allows us to be really agile and nimble, similar to how Larry was explaining our chefs in our restaurants operate. And what this allows us to do is receive orders as small as 10 cases from partners. So some partners who maybe just want to send us 10 cases a week of kale, and for them, that's scale. We work with them to do that. So over the course of a given season, we could be receiving kale from up to 20 different partners. With that, obviously creates some challenges. Farmers definitely have a bad rep for not being great communicators.
They're busy.
They're all busy. We're all busy. But there's definitely it's just a matter of putting the puzzle together. So figuring out when product is coming in, and especially if we're trying to feature that particular farm's product, it's a lot of dates and moving around deliveries, and half of the cost sometimes can be figuring out getting it into the city and just the cost of distribution. So our main focus is never allowing the cost of moving food to take away from the farmer either making money or allowing them to participate in the program. So it's always about taking away any barrier for entry, and we work with growers to do that. And sometimes it's logistics, sometimes it's packing, sometimes it's pack size, and
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I would imagine that helps a farmer a lot to be able to just drop off at that distribution point for all of the restaurants in New York rather than having to have
Exactly.
someone drive around to each one.
Exactly.
And, yeah, that would take forever, especially in the city. I can't, yeah.
Yeah, I think if I asked our farmers to deliver to 27 restaurants, might be a little bit more challenging of a conversation to have.
Right.
I would not do it. I can just
Heard
say
it
that
first.
right now.
Larry would not do it.
I mean, I was talking to, I met a new grower this morning at Union Square, and, we were talking about, bringing him on and, buying carrots from him. And I told him, we have a single distribution point in Hunts Point in the Bronx that you can deliver to. And he was like, amazing.
Yeah.
And he was like, that is a huge selling point for us to work with you all because, who wants to drive? Who wants to drive
Right.
in Manhattan?
Yeah.
No one wants to drive in Manhattan. A big truck? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And at a larger scale, it just really allows us to have full ownership of our supply chain, which is our goal at DIG. We want to be able to know every point at which it comes to us, and we can trust what we're sending out to our restaurants, and also have really good conversations and feedback opportunities with our suppliers. So, hey, you know what? Next time, just send the kale loose. Don't even bother bunching it. Does this save you time on the labor? Can you maybe be quicker when you're harvesting? All of these things, being able to control the whole supply chain allows us to get even better at what we're doing.
And I think too, I think that's a great strength of us having our own farm, right? Because at the end of each season, I can sit down with Taylor and we can talk about what are the challenges of what we've grown this year. What can we, why did this turn out this way? Why should you be packing this way? And so, because I work with Taylor, right? We can sit down and have this conversation. We can have this conversation over a couple of days, over, for as long as it is necessary, and we can get that information. Whereas any other farmer is like, I don't have time to just sit down with you and take a whole week to discuss, what happened in the season. But I can do that with Taylor, and that's information that helps us with our partners too, and allows us to grow a closer bond to all of our other farmers.
Yeah, absolutely. And what one thing I'm curious about too is today is such a beautiful day. I was thinking about this on the way over. I'm like, oh, it's finally spring. It's so nice out. What do you do in the winter? I mean, we are not in a region where you can source locally year round, right? So how do you manage that?
Yeah. Great question.
You're like,
April,
it's the bane of my existence.
No, I actually think April is the hardest month to source food. It's
yeah.
brutal. But we have a pretty strong and robust local program in the winter as well. And a lot of that is because agriculture has helped us in storage crops. So our winter menu is made up of butternut squash and apples and beets and carrots. Actually, a lot of the winter squashes. But this allows us to really still celebrate local food and guarantee that producers are making money in December and January and March. And we plan with them such that they can store that for us, or we can figure out storage opportunities that allow us to keep having a weekly income that we provide for them.
Right.
The other thing is we definitely, not every crop has a strong shelf life, so we'll move down south before we move west, and that has just allowed us to celebrate more of the Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina farmers that are a part of the regional food system and prevent us from going to California.
Got it. Do you source from any of the indoor farms around New York too, like Greens or?
We have a few partnerships with Gotham Greens, Arrow Farms, Bowery Farms, and we love to celebrate them, especially in the winter.
Right.
And in the summer, those relationships are valuable, and we offer more of a responsive nature. So they'll say, hey, we have a ton of extra product that we'd love to move, or hey, this product was slightly damaged or what we'd call imperfect. Can you help us? And we play that role just because we do lean towards supporting outdoor soil-driven agriculture in the summer.
Interesting. All right, so we need to take a quick break. We will be back. I want to, after the break, maybe get a little into just the value of the way you do things and local sourcing, and we'll kind of, I was going to say we'll dig into that. Oh my God. All right, we'll be right back after this word from our sponsor.
Today's program was brought to you by Roth Cheese, a pioneer in the U.S. specialty cheese movement. Roth is in its 25th year of making specialty cheese in the rolling hills of southern Wisconsin. With strong Swiss heritage, Roth is best known for its award-winning Alpine-style cheeses under the name Grand Cru. Fresh Wisconsin milk combined with expertise and affinage is how Roth creates high-quality, great-tasting cheese year after year. In 2016, hard work paid off when out of over 2,000 contenders, Roth Grand Cru Surchoix was named world champion at the World Cheese Championship. For more information, visit rothcheese.com.
Hey there, seems like you like podcasts. My name is Eli Sussman. I'm a chef and restaurant owner, and I've got a great podcast right here on Heritage Radio Network called The Line. On my show, I interview chefs and restaurateurs about the trajectory of their career. It's a one-on-one conversation where we talk about where it all started to where they are cooking now and everything in between. You can find The Line everywhere you get your podcasts and on heritageradionetwork.org.
All right, we're back. You're listening to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network. I'm here with Taylor and Larry from Dig In, and we've been talking about all of the ways that they grow and source the food for the many restaurants. So we've been talking a lot about logistics and how this all works. Obviously, both of you believe strongly in sourcing from local farms, especially given, we talked about how it's harder to do things this way, right, than just working with a big distributor. I'm like super interested in talking about this question of like the value of local, and is it, when there's so many other ways to qualify sourcing good food, like, do you only source organic, or do you, there are lots of ways people kind of qualify how they source. And I'm just curious to hear from you when someone asks you like why the focus on sourcing local food. What's your first response?
I would say that local has always been and has been a driver of how Dig sources food, but even greater than that is the direct relationships and partnerships that we have. And I think that's a little bit harder to quantify sometimes than local sourcing, but there are many anecdotes that I think speak even broader to just what it means to buy local food. For example, while we have exceptional relationships with farmers where we plan with them in advance and offer really clear opportunities to be a part of the program, we figure out logistics, right? And all this stuff, that's buying local food and buying direct is just one part. But more so, a great example would be Larry, who is working in Orange County and helping other farmers. So, hey, Larry, can I borrow the tractor? Can you help me with my fields this week? There's all these other ways in which supporting local food doesn't have to include buying, and it includes someone working at their farmer's market, working on a farm, or in Larry's case, helping other farmers succeed. And I think that positions us to care a little bit more about just the work that's being done on the relationship side to really drive what a local and then regional food system could look like.
Yeah, we, on the farm, like I mentioned before, right, we want to be good partners in the space, and we want to advance our industry. So for a lot of the young farmers near us, the site that we're on is run by the Chester Agricultural Center. And it's an incubator type program that leases land to young farmers at a reduced rate. And so we're there. We lease land there, and there are all these other young farmers around us who don't have the money or the capital to purchase equipment. And so our I guess, ethical standing or our drive here to make it easier for our partners or people who might eventually become our partners, right? These other young farmers, is to make their lives easier, to help them build their businesses to be sustainable environmentally and economically. So we do tractor work for them because we have a nice tractor and we have really nice equipment, and we do it for free. And this year last year we had a young lady on my crew who was very interested in starting her own farm, and she had only worked on our farm for 1 year, actually her first year farming. And I think it speaks to the strength of our training program that at the end of that, she said that she wanted to start her own farm. And so we're piloting an incubator program right now where we are giving her her farm, and her name is Kayla Holterman. Her farm is Radiance Farm.
Oh, cool.
And she's also from Warwick as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But so we're giving her land, we're letting her use our equipment, and I think most importantly, we're giving her a sales outlet. Because I think this is not a surprise, right? The pie for local agriculture, it doesn't really grow that quickly year on year, right? It shifts a little bit. Sometimes CSAs go more, sometimes the farmers markets are more, sometimes wholesale. But for the most part, it's been fairly stable. And so, by giving her an outlet to sell 150 pounds of basil a week to our restaurants, we think that that's a way that we can build her business and start another young small business in our community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add there too, Larry, and this is something that positions us in a pretty unique space, we want to get really good at collecting knowledge and stories from season after season and get really sort of ahead of information sharing. So because of our unique position, Larry can synthesize what's happening either at our farm or from other farms in such a way where the value around local becomes even more meaningful because we can, hey, last year we tried this and it worked really well, or if this happens, here's how to navigate it. And I think in the next couple of years, we just want to figure out the best way to be an outlet of sharing that and maybe prevent people from making the same mistakes that we've made or our partners have made.
Certainly made a lot of mistakes. In a grand sense, right, I think that when we buy local, we are supporting these small businesses, right? And Taylor knows more about our young farmer and minority farmer portfolio than I do. But we're trying to build these small businesses so they become larger and they become bigger parts of their communities, right? Because traditionally farms have been hubs of communities. And we want more farms to pop up. We want to support more small farms to make them bigger farms and to have them, become these centers where people can go to and get their fresh produce from, right? That they're not just, maybe, and nothing against the people of 1 or 2 acres operations, right? But for people who want to grow bigger, we want to give them the ability to grow bigger by joining our family of farmers.
Well, and the Chester Agricultural Center is such an interesting model. I mean, you kind of mentioned it, but I think there's 7 farms in the group where you are, something like that. A little,
yes.
Maybe it's
plus minus.
Yeah,
it changes every year.
But that used to be one giant onion farm that was sprayed with pesticides regularly, right behind a community, and now it's all these people growing food organically, all different young farmers. It's kind of, I guess it's really an interesting model. And do you think that having everyone together like that, has that experience, do you think that it's a good model for helping young farmers get started, having people all in one place like that?
Sure, yeah. I think we'll tackle this a couple different ways, right?
Yeah.
For me as a farmer, it's great to be around other people.
Yeah.
Right? Because normally it's just like me and the crew, and
right.
We eventually get tired of each other.
Yeah.
But it's nice to always be around other people, and it's cool to see lots of different operations, right? I think it wasn't, intentionally done this way, but what has happened at the CAC is that we have all these different enterprises, but we all do something a little different, right? We have someone who does CSA, we have someone who does farmers markets, we have someone who does flowers, and then we do wholesale, right? So it's cool to see different operations and to see different ways of growing. And there's a lot of knowledge sharing there because everyone has their own way of growing, and we all share tips. And the Black Dirt is such a unique place that nothing really prepares you for it, right? It's so much different than upland farming. That this knowledge sharing is really, really important, and the fact that there is a community around us to help support each other when when we have a bad year like last year. it was one of the rainiest years, I think, in the past 50 years in upstate New York. We were all there to kind of just be like, well, this is a bad deal, but at least we're all in this together. We're all kind of falling down together.
Yeah, the CAC has a, for lack of better comparison, sort of like a WeWork or collaborative working space vibe where you can share resources, right?
Yeah, and that was that's the next part I was going to get to was that there is all this infrastructure here, right? Like our walk-in is the size of a barn. I mean, it's huge. We would never be able. I mean, Diggin could build something like that, right? But like for a young farmer, they would never be able to build something like that, right?
Yeah.
There are all these barns, there are all these greenhouses that you can rent, and for someone who may be a little undercapitalized at the beginning of their business, it's a good deal to be able to go in there and not have to build your own greenhouse or have to build your own barn, which is the intention behind our incubator as well. That we want to give Kayla and Radiance Farm the ability to gain capital, to gain experience without having to risk everything for her, because she's young. She's, I think, like 21, 22. And so we want her to be able to put that money in the bank and then eventually build out her own infrastructure, buy her own tractor, build her own greenhouse. So essentially the same thing what the Chester Ag Center does for all these other farmers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I'm going to push you a little on the local thing. One thing, I was just reading this article this week, and one thing that gets thrown around a lot is like for people who are trying to figure out how they should eat in order to minimize environmental impact. People say like, well, it's not really better for the environment because local farmers use older trucks, and you think that it's the transportation miles are going to be a benefit, but then actually it might not be. I would just love to hear your thoughts on like if you're someone who wants to eat in a way that minimizes environmental impact, is local the way to go?
There's a lot of nuance there, but
I love nuance. Let's get into it.
Local is one way that you can have a really good impact on the environment. Also, eating a diet of mostly vegetables is also a really good way that you can have an impact on the environment, and that's something that Dig In really champions. If you were to choose never eating vegetables versus eating vegetables that were from a couple thousand miles away, I would say go with the vegetables.
Eat vegetables, yeah. That's sort of like one of the only overarching like diet and environmental things you can just always say, like, yes, eat vegetables.
Eat vegetables.
Don't eat sugar.
Yeah,
there you
go. Better for you and the planet.
Right.
I would say that I think a lot of people need to figure out what works for them that they can stick to. So if it's going to the farmer's market and maybe learning a little bit about the tools and the practices that farmer's using that you can align with, great. But maybe someone's a little bit more inclined to learning about labor practices and immigration. And that's also a really valid way to make your choices around eating that, someone might care about more than transportation. So I think the most important thing is just kind of having a personal stance on it and finding producers that you can support. Another great nuance would be having organic certification versus not. And some farmers are priced out of the certification but practice even higher standards than what organic certification entails.
Right.
And then there's a great case to be made for supporting second, third, fourth generation family farms. You can choose to work with younger or beginning farmers, but keeping farmland in production and or taking it from conventional intensive and putting it into super great dynamic organic production is what a younger generation could do. So not a necessarily direct answer to that, but I think there's a lot of exciting nuance where if someone has a policy or a position that they really stand behind, there are so many producers you can find to support that.
Right.
And so, and then I don't want to seem like, I don't want to drill down on a single point or like latch onto something that's just like one thing, right? But if we're talking about old equipment and stuff that may not be as environmentally friendly as, the newer tractors, I mean, is this world a better place if every farmer was just a millionaire who decided to run their own little 2-acre operation and can buy the newest equipment and can buy an electric tractor? I think that, yeah, sure, our young farmers, they can't afford to buy a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 John Deere tractor. But does that make it... Does that disqualify them from trying to work in sync with the environment, to think about the holistic health of their land.
Yeah.
You know, I think that a lot of our young farmers are pushing our industry in a better direction, and they have a lot of great ideas, and everyone's trying to grow their business and expand their businesses, but everyone's got to start somewhere. And these small farms, you know, they're on their way to becoming better operations, and everyone's trying to get better. You know, none of us came into this business to spray or to drive old trucks or to pollute the environment, right? We're all trying to do better. And, you know, I think too, even if, say, like this farm is, you know, 10% better, you know, environmentally than another farm, well, that's 10%, you know, and if we all do 10% better, that's a huge difference, you know, and we keep moving in that direction.
Yeah.
You know, I always tell my team that, like, maybe I might not be the most sustainable farmer that you'll ever meet, right? But I think that I do 10% better than the guy that I was taught under. And if you guys do 10% better than me, and the people that you train do 10% better than you know, like that's going to change the world.
Yeah. Progress.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of folks, being able to either find food that they feel as if represents what their diet entails, I think is also super important. So if you're an apple eater, there's no reason why you can't buy local apples in New York year round. Right? Like don't buy them from Washington State. But also if you are Hispanic or non-white or looking for a different type of cuisine that's not represented at the farmer's market, there are tons of organizations that have specific and diverse markets that you can find food that represents your culture. And I think that's a really important piece to allow just more diversity in what people are searching for and make sure that what people are looking for is found.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that we could sort of go on a whole other conversation there. But I mean, I think everything that you said about, especially just getting young farmers started, I mean, that again could be just a whole conversation. I've had a lot of shows where we talk about just the challenges that young farmers face, and we need a lot of farmers right now, right? Like we need to get a lot of people on land and get them farming, because farmers are just aging and
yeah, we need more young farmers. You know, we need better ideas. We need people who are more diverse as well in our
absolutely
in our industry. You know, I think for a long time, and this might not be a very popular opinion, but you know, I feel very strongly that our, you know, the small, like, local farm community or industry has been built on unfair labor practices, that we've been paying
100%.
people very, you know, when I started, I got paid $600 a month to work on a farm. And, you know, it's hard work,
Yeah.
you know, and I went to college, you know, like, you know,
right.
But
right, and we're talking about farmers. We're not even talking about farm workers that maybe aren't the farm owner.
Exactly.
That are all minority immigrants. That
exactly
yeah.
right. And so you know, a lot of the people who were able to make things work come from you know, privileged backgrounds, that come from places that that are predominantly white, that are predominantly middle to upper middle class,
Right.
And it has really skewed our industry towards towards this class of people. And so, you know, a couple of years ago, I had someone come up to me, and Taylor, I just told you the story in the car. Come up to me at a conference, and she was like, "Are you Larry, the farmer from Dig In?" And I was like, "I am." How did you know?
This happens all the time.
Celebrity.
Well, no, but she was like, you know, I heard Dig In hired an Asian farmer, so I just assumed it was you because you're the only Asian farmer here, you know. And I mean, it's kind of cool for me, but
Right.
it
But
doesn't
you're like,
speak
oh,
well to our
God,
industry,
yeah.
right?
Oh, my
that we
God.
don't have these many people,
Right.
this many people, and you know, I think for how do we serve our underrepresented communities, right?
Yeah.
You can't go into an Asian community and try to sell pesto basil,
Right.
You know, like, we're not going to touch that. You have to understand these communities that you want to serve, and our industry as a whole does not serve our minority communities, and that's why we need to bring in more minorities. We need to figure out a way that, and this is a very grand problem, right? On a macro scale, that this is a problem with
Yeah.
agriculture. How do we raise the incomes of our farmers so that we can have righteous wages for all of our employees? Because not everyone can afford to pay their employees like they can afford to pay.
Right.
Again, we realize that we are in a privileged position to be able to pay our employees like this, but how do we create an agriculture system that is judicious and fair to all of the people who work here, to all of our farm workers in California, we don't have to get too deep into that whole thing, right? But like, how do we raise their wages? How do we, not raise their standing in society, but, shine a light on this portion of our industry and say, this is why your food is this cheap, is because these working conditions are like this.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, this is becoming a 3-part series.
Oh my God. This is like, I love these topics.
The last thing I'll say to that point, Larry, is all the work that Larry's doing to increase access to learning how to farm and create opportunities for people who otherwise might not have access to it. We are also doing that at the Dig-In supply chain more broadly. So we set goals for ourselves and really intentionally seek out marginalized women, people of color, queer, immigrant farmers, so that we can spend money with. We want to support them and use our purchasing power for good.
Right. Well, we have to wrap up, and I think that is a great place to end. Thank you both for being here. This was a really, really interesting conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
My first podcast.
Amazing.
Or a radio show, I suppose.
It's both. Thank you all so much for listening to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and share it. And don't forget to support independent food radio by visiting heritageradionetwork.com and clicking on the beating heart. See you next Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to learn more about our 10-year anniversary celebration happening all year long, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners just like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.